how I can share my screen. I think it's this one. Okay, just a quick check. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so Angular Builders, the cool kid under the CLI hood. Before we go dive deep, let me introduce myself. My name is Jeffrey. I live in the Netherlands. I work for a company that's called Stipply. We do like digital signing of documents. I'm one of the organizers of the Dutch Angular group, where we two monthly organize same talks as this community around Angular. I'm one of the core members of the XLayers project, where you can transform your sketch files into Angular code. I'm an author of the NGX AWS deploy, where you can easily deploy your Angular application to AWS. And I've made some Scully plugins where you can, how do you say it? If you have like a blog with Scully, it will look at the content and put out the output is like the time it would be to read. And you can also hook it up with a Meetup API so you can generate your event from there. Before we are going into the specifics around builders, this is not like the way. There is not a good way or the best practice way to create builders. It's just my way of how I create builders. There is some documentation around it, but there's not like a style guide or a guide that you should do. So this is my way, and learn from it and experiment with it, basically. Before I go to history, if you have questions, interrupt me. That's not a problem. Just let me know. Before we are going to today, we're going back to history. When you look at Angular CLI v8 a little bit before, and you wanted to make changes to specific Webpack configurations, you needed to use a command that's called ng-eject. And basically what it does, it outputted the Webpack config, and you could change it from there. So let's say you wanted to add a Webpack plugin, for example, you needed to run the ng-eject. The Angular CLI would output a complete set of configuration files for the Webpack configuration. You could change it, but you never could go back easily because, yeah, you needed specific changes to the Webpack config for your project. And that's basically changed today. So the change is basically Angular's CLI builders. And basically what a builder is, it's actually pretty simple. It's just a function, and the function that needs to do one specific task. And how this is connected within the CLI is basically with a tool that they created that lives in the Angular CLI that's called the architect tool. And what the architect tool does is it basically delegates work to these builders, to these functions. So you could say, okay, this is, if it's like too hard to understand it, you could say it like, okay, you got a task-based system that's within the Angular CLI that just delegates work for a specific task. And the task that is a builder, and the task-based system, that's the architect tool that just says, okay, I needed to do something, then I will run this task. We'll dive a little bit deeper later in the slides, and feel free if it's not like clear enough at the end. And there is a difference because the architect tool also will be used with the schematic, but they both have a different purpose. So if you look at the schematics, what it basically does, it is like templating or generating specific things for your files. It touches your files. Where the builders, they actually read your files, and based on your workspace, your Angular workspace, it will make an output or change specific things, but it should not theoretically like change content of the files. It always should give a different file, for example, than back, and not change the root file of it. If we look a little bit deeper in a CLI builder, it expects two basic inputs, if you want to call it like that. So one of the inputs is like the options. And these options, these are provided by us, the users that are using the Angular CLI, or within the Angular.json. And I think we're looking into the Angular.json a little bit further. I think if we're looking into it, we all see, oh yeah, this is what he meant at this point where he said options, because I think we're all familiar with these options because we're using it every day. The context part, that's a different part. That's like, let's call it like the API from the CLI team. And here you can do some logging, but you can also schedule other builders with this. And this is like the internal API build from the CLI. So I just said we're all already familiar with these options, and that's because CLI builders, we're using them every day actually. And these are basically all builders. Here we're looking at the Angular CLI commands like ngserve, ngbuild, ngtest, nglint, all probably familiar commands that are used every day. And they're all, under the hood, they all use a different builder. For example, ngserve, this is like the dev server builder, they call it. And what it basically does, it executes the browser builder, that's ngbuild, and it will run a HTTP dev server. And then I think it's like the Webpack HTTP server, but you can also use a different one if that's needed. And if you look at ngtest, it's like the Karma builder. So all these builders, they're already present, and they are. I've also added like the deprecations, because nglint and ng end-to-end test, the builders will be deprecated. So not the command, don't worry, we always can do nglint, but the builders like tslint is deprecated, and the protected builder is deprecated from version 12. But the flexibility of builders is that we can interchange them by using our own version. So for example, the custom Webpack server, we could change that one so that when we run ngserve, it will execute the custom Webpack server. Or if we want to test with, for example, a Jest test framework, we could use a Jest builder and just change it because it is just a function. That's basically how it is. And I'm on the right side, I also add like PO file builder. It's not a thing. It's not present. Maybe somebody built it, but I don't know. If you look at I18N, it's like the XML based structure, and PO is also something for translation files, but it's like text based. I'm not sure if somebody's using it today. I've not seen a builder like this. But you can see based on this sheet that it's pretty flexible to use these kinds of builders. So how are we using these builders? So we already looked at ngbuild, and we could run ngbuild app. And under the hood, it has a couple of things to do. And what we actually seeing or doing with ngbuild app is that we're saying like, okay, when we do the ngbuild, it would call a architect target. And why it's called architect, we will look into the next slide, but keep that in mind. So ngbuild is always the architect target. If we look test, that's also the architect target. And the app, that's basically our project name. And this can be our app or libraries if we're in the more project structure of Angular CLI. We now running the ngbuild app command, and if we look right, I've added a snippet of the Angular JSON that I just made from a simple ng new application. So I didn't change anything. I just removed a lot of extra comments there, or extra lines, so that we can see what were needed. We just said, okay, what's the architect target? Basically, when we run the ngbuild app, it will look into the angular.json file, and it will look up this build part. And if you look closely, you will see that the build is right under architect. And that is why it's called the architect target. So basically, when we do ngbuild, it will go to the JSON file. It will look at the architect property, and it will say, okay, which task do I need to execute? And that's basically the build. And from there, it can see in the next tab, that's called the builder, which task it needs to run and which function it needs to use. In this example, you see that's like the Angular dev kit build Angular browser part. And the second part we just saw is the project part. So in this case, we're looking at app and I'm referring to demo. So that's maybe not correct, but basically we'll look up like the project. It will go there and get the values from it, go to the architect, and then go to the build command. So if we basically what we're doing under the hood is even different than I just showed you. Excuse me. Basically what we're doing is a completely different command than we normally use. Normally we use ng-build, and basically underneath the hood we're executing the command ng-run app build production. And what it is translated in is like ng-run the project, the architect target, and a configuration. And from version 12, production will always be like the main configuration there, but we can make our own overrides. So if we want to have like a staging part, then we could do it like this. So we could say ng-run app build staging, for example, and it will check again in the angular.json. It will look at the configuration properties and it will get the specific configuration from that point. And based on that, you can also do a lot of different changes. If you look like, for example, inline CSS or output hashing or that kind of configuration for different environments or specifics, you can all easily change them on the fly. This is also very handy when you're doing CI, for example, in your pipeline structure. So how can we make these custom builders, or how can we make a builder? So for today, I'm going to show you a couple of steps that you always need to do, and I'm going to show you one of the things I've created. Before we are going to dive deep into that, I just made some simple steps. Of course, you need to just create a repo, npm init, then you do like your git init. You always need to have the dependencies TypeScript, Angular dev kit /architect. That's like the thing you really need. And you add some npm scripts for building and testing your package. And this is all up to you, how you're going to do this. There's not like a specific thing that the Angular team says that you need to do it this way. If you want to use Jest for testing, go ahead and use Jest. It doesn't matter. So the second thing you need to do is add a builders.json to your package.json. So on the right, I've created a example of the package.json and from my project Imagination. And I just add the builders property there with the builders.json there. And these builders.json file, it needs to be present there. And this looks a little bit like this. And in the example with the code, we're going to look at it, and you will see similar the similar structure. And basically what you're saying is in the JSON that it is a builder, and you have a command. And basically the optimize command that you're seeing here is the command that you can use within your run command. So the ng-run command. The implementation is where the output is of the JavaScript file in your package. The schema is like the options we've seen before. You always need to define a schema.json for the options that it expects, so the inputs, and you can give it a description. I think it's not even required this property. So the next step would be to add a index.ts, and it's as easy as this. You make an index.ts, you import a couple of things, and you use the create builder function. And what the create builder function does, it will basically hook up your the function or the code that's in the create builders function to the architect tool, so to the task-based system. So it knows, it just registers a couple of things there so that it knows how to work with the Angular CLI. But basically, this is the only thing you need to create your custom builder. And it depends on your use case on how you, or what you're going to do. So now let's look at a demo. And what we're going to see is a demo where we are going to optimize some images. And I'm going to use it with my custom command because there is no ng optimize, for example, that isn't there, and you cannot make it available. So your custom builders will always have a command ng run your app with your function. I'm going to close my screen now and switch over to my code. Let me look where it is. Okay, and let me look. Share my screen again. And it should be right on screen. Can we see it?
Yep.
Okay, good. Okay, so let's go a little bit over the structure. Don't worry about the zip file here. I made it so that I can use it in my demo project so that we can actually see it run later. I just made a package.json. Here's the similar we have seen in the slides. I created like files for the output, and I created the builders. I add some dev dependencies. I added the architect one and some extras because in my case I'm going to use these and some other stuff there. And I've added some scripts. It's pretty easy. When we run npm run build, we're just using the TypeScript compiler. And I'm also using this post build. And what this post build is going to do, it will basically copy my schema.json to the dist file. That's basically what it's doing. And I have some pre-commit hooks there. So let's go to the builders.json file. As I already showed, it's the same. Basically, we start with the builders. We are running one command, in this case, optimize. If we would run extra commands, we would have something like this. I'm not sure, downgrade images, something like that. And we would do the same things here. So this is not different than we've seen in the presentation. Let's go to the index.ts. And I'm going to close a couple of things. So that's readable. We imported the architect package from the Angular dev kit. We used the create builder wrapper function, and we hooked it up with my function that's called execute. And basically, we have a couple of things here. We have the options, that's like the input options. That's why I called it also the input options. And we have the context, and the context it's provided by the Angular CLI. And these input options, they're basically a JSON object. And what you see a lot is that it's called like the schema. And what the schema does, because I made just a plain interface, it are the properties or the options that are available within this builder. So in my case, we're using quality, max width, folder, and extensions. And if you go back, for example, to the Karma builder, for example, it could be like something around coverage, where you say where the output of your coverage should be. Or if you do ng build, it could be like a specific setting for if you do vendor hashing yes or no, or that kind of stuff. And this is just because I want to have the nice IntelliSense in TypeScript. Well, if we go a little bit further, I'm just saying, okay, in the context, there's a logger which just logs something in the warn state and just says, okay, start optimizing these things. I'm using a couple of external packages to look up some of the files, and the files I'm going to look in are basically the one provided by, well, the options. And in my case, I configured it that it will always look at the src assets folder. And for the extension, I also have configured it that it's like PNG, JPEG, that kind of stuff. I will show you how you can do this after we are looking into the index.ts file. Basically, the glob package, it will look up based on the pattern that we did here, and it will look up the files, and it will say, okay, these are the paths to these files. I use again the context logger, so the log from the Angular CLI, where I say, okay, how many matches did we find? And I'm doing some, let's go a little bit deeper, and I'm doing some optimization right here, where we say, okay, optimize this image with a max width, a quality, and give it a specific name. That's basically what happens. So I'm just saying, okay, if you find a file and it's not within a specific range, just change it to a good size or a different format. In this case, it will output like a JPEG format. And when we're done, we say, okay, we're finished with the optimizations. We optimize these images. And if we're in the error state, then I will catch it, because a builder always needs to have a pattern like this. So it always expects a success, true or false. That's how the internals work. And if there is an error, you should provide the error message here, and it will log out this message. So it's not complicated. The implementation is not really complicated. Let's summarize it again, just to be sure that everybody's understanding. So we use the create builder function provided by the Architect package, where we say, okay, when this builder is going to be executed, you need to use this function. This function has some options that we define based on a schema.json. And for the IntelliSense, we use a specific interface, TypeScript interface, and we're doing our implementation, and that's different for every builder. In my case, it's around image optimization. Now, as I already said, I added like defaults, because that's what I already said a little bit earlier, where the extensions would be something like PNG, JPEG, and that kind of stuff, and that lives in the schema.json. And if we go to the schema.json, this is basically how it looks. So you need to define the schema, you need to define an ID, and this is also not like, this can be any name, it's just a unique identifier, that's it. So it can be anything. I just use schema, and you need to use the type of object. Then we look at the properties, and these properties are the ones we just saw. Like in the interface, it's like the quality, the max width, the folder, and the extensions. Let's open the quality. So the quality should always be a number. So we said, okay, it should be of type number, and we add a description there so that we know what it is, and we set a default. And this can be done for any of these properties. The same goes for max width. We're only saying a different default. We can use it for our folders, and that's in this case a type string. And that is src as I just already mentioned. And here we're doing the PNG, JPEG, and that kind of stuff. And then in the bottom, you also see like the required one. And what this basically does, when you hook this up with the Angular CLI, it will look at this schema, and it will say, okay, which of these options, so extensions, folder, max width, are required. And if it's present and you're not giving this option, it will fail, and it will say to you like, okay, I'm missing this configuration or these options, and you need to provide them. So in my case, it doesn't matter, because I also have like the defaults. But if you wouldn't have any default settings, then you need to probably provide it some way. Okay, so this is basically the imagization builder, and it's nothing special. I made a zip and I imported in my other project. So let me switch to that one. So that you also can see how this is being used. That's this one. Again, I just did a plain Angular ng new. Didn't do anything specific, so it's pretty clean here. It just with a routing module, but doesn't matter for the talk, but I didn't change basically anything here. It's still a new project. What I have done is to show you is added 3 images, and I will show you a little bit. It's like this one, and it's around the plane. And I've added the imagization package. Let me look it up, and it's here. So I just installed it based on the zip file. That's basically what I did. Normally, you would, of course, publish it to npm or in your internal npm registry, and you just npm install or ng add, something like that, and it would just have a normal version. In my case, I just used the zip file. And what I've done is added it to the angular.json file. And basically what I did is I added it under the architect of our Angular Kenya project. A command is called optimize. And I'm saying you should use this builder imagization with the command, and that's separated by this with the command optimize. I don't have any specific configurations, and I don't have any specific options. So this looks pretty similar. If you look at this one, the build, for example, we're saying the same thing. The only thing is the difference with the builder there. And now I'm going to show you, and I already did it here, so I'm going to copy paste. Oh, that's not going to work. Let me do it again, like this. npx ng run Angular Kenya.optimize. So we are saying, okay, from the project Angular Kenya, I want to use the optimize command, and let's see what it does. Okay, so we've seen this starting optimization in the builder project. It found 3 matches, and it also optimized 3 images. And we saw that it changed in the Git source control extension. Let's see what it changed. So this looks still pretty similar. This also, so it changed only the quality. And we're now curious, like, okay, but what can we do then? How can we verify this, for example, that it really worked? I'm now going to add the options property. And we had something that's called the max_width. And I'm just going to change it with a random number. I'm not sure which number we should use, but I just pick a number, and it again optimized it. And now we can see that it's changed the images with a specific width in our case so that it's cropped or smaller than the original one. And this is one of the ways. So this we now change like the Angular.json, where you say, okay, these are my default options, basically. But we also can do this. Let's remove this again, like this. And I hope you can still see it. Max width is 100. So again, it found again the same 3 matches, but now I just added the options as an argument to the command, and it again changed the max width. So basically, it's really flexible. If you have like specific options, you can. Well, I would recommend to add it to the Angular.json file. But if you have, for example, like a specific setting that you want to override, like when you run the command locally or in an environment, you can easily like just add the argument there. And this argument always overrides these settings here. So it will always override the thing you already configured in the Angular.json. I think that's good to know, because otherwise you will expect something differently, probably. Okay, back to my slides. Let me open it up. Let me see, here it is again. Okay, where should we use these builders? Because, well, you've seen now one of the use cases where you could use it. I think you could use it for image optimization. you could use it if you want to play with a new test framework. There are a lot of test frameworks out there. You could make your own implementation. If you don't like, for example, Jest or Karma, or you want to try something differently, you can. If you have a company or you have multiple open source libraries, you could make a release builder where you say, okay, I always do these kinds of tasks, and I want to have it in a structured way so that everybody in the company or from your project team would do it the same way. You could make your own builder for that, where you can just say, okay, ng run application release. But you can also do it, for example, one of the GDEs made ngx Electronify, and you could also run it, for example, an app in Electron. So what did we see? Referring to the start. So builders are task-based functions. They're nothing more than that. It's just a process that's can be run related to the workspace, and in this case, the Angular workspace. It shouldn't change files like the code files. I mean like that. So it should always do different things there, and and that's why I use the image optimization, because that are assets and not code files. That's a big difference. We can do almost everything because it's just JavaScript code, so we can do anything you want. For example, if you have like a open API specification, you can even generate your own interfaces or generate services from that. It's one of the main building blocks in the CLI, so it's used by the Angular CLI itself. So that's why it's also so flexible, and in some cases it will save time. If you have a specific way how you should or how you're releasing your projects, it will just save time if you just build one builder and maintain it for all the projects and use it within all the projects. I've added some resources. I will share the slides so that you can look it up. These are my resources where I learned it, where I looked at. A couple of talks that you can look at, like the one from Mike Arrington. I think it's from ngconf last year. You can also look at a couple of the projects where we created already builders. And Santosh also did a great talk already on Angular builders and one of the things. And I'm now up for questions around builders, because I think there are a lot of questions still around builders. And thank you, Wayne, and the Kenya community for inviting me over here.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jeffrey. Before I do anything, is there anyone who has a question? Please just unmute yourself and you can ask.
Can I ask a question?
You can.
Excellent. As usual, Jeffrey, great presentation. Thank you very much. That was really useful. I was just wondering, can you actually, if you create a builder, can you extend other builders? I.e., could you make a builder that would do first an Angular build and then a deploy or something?
Yeah, that could be done. So what you can do,
create all the other, I mean, still use the official builder.
Yeah, that's possible.
Okay. Yeah.
So if you look at the ngx AWS deploy, for example, what I basically do, I look again in the Angular.json. I look again in the architect target, like, okay, I got this project and it has the build command. So give me the builder from the Angular.json and run it with a specific configuration. And 9 out of 10, that's production probably, and run it that way. So basically, I'm using the Angular CLI context, which is the internal API of the Angular CLI, and I say schedule builder. And it's a async function, so I just wait until the result. And if the result is successfully, I just execute my own function after that. And that is basically the implementation for AWS.
Very cool. All right, thank you. Maybe another question from me, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. I'm here all around the questions. So go ahead. Any question is good.
Can you also pull in the entire schematics stuff? Because I can see possibilities, right? So is it possible for a schematic to include a builder and for a builder to actually also fire off a schematic?
Yeah, I think it would be possible, and I think there are use cases where you could use it. But in
possibilities, basically.
yeah, but it depends a bit on, because you're running just a couple of commands for the schematics. Let's say the ng-add, that's maybe too simple, but let's say if you want to generate a interfaces basically on the OpenAPI specification, and let's say that you have a schematic for that, you could already just make an HTTP call in a way and run it. So you can use the builder for that, but I wouldn't do that, I think.
Right.
But okay. but you can, yeah, of course, and you can do it a couple of ways, I think, and you can even go, let's say, dirty and just run a executable sync with the ng-run schematics command, let's call it like that, where you just do it like that. That would be one of the
shell it or bash it basically from within your
Yeah. But it's schematic has a different purpose than the builders, and that's the main point. Like the builder, it should read files, or at least your code, and change that to specific ES modules or specific needs, and it shouldn't like really touch or change files. But yeah, sure, it could be possible, of course.
Really cool. Thanks.
I think this is one of the reasons why the Narwhal Annex guys, they changed names to executors and generators, because they're easier, I need to say, interchangeable at that point. And that's one of the reasons I think they did it.
Check, yeah, that makes sense. All right, thanks.
Okay. So hi Jeffrey, can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Ashish from India. So actually, as you took the name of Santosh sir, so in last talk, I think I was there with Santosh sir. Like he was teaching about builder. So he has created that NGX builder, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to I'm exploring it as of now, because I want to contribute to NGX builder.
Yeah.
So actually, it sounds a bit silly, but rather than create builder, I don't know anything to be means how to proceed further. So need some good input from your side, so I can increase my knowledge and contribute something to community.
Okay, well, that's a great question. Let me first thank you that you want to do open source contribution to these kinds of projects. I think it's pretty awesome. I'm a open source fan, if you want to call it like that. So I'm pretty excited that you're asking this question. So maybe I can tell you a little bit about my story, how I started. I think I saw Santosh. How to say it, talk. I'm not sure if it was on NG India or which of the online meetups. And I saw also like he was doing, I think it was the Netlify builder. And that was for my point, like, okay, this is cool, but how can I do this? Because the ng deploy command that is in the Angular CLI available, it's basically also a builder. So I just started with looking at his repository, and I just looked at the documentation of the Angular IO website, and there Minke also has like an example project. It's really simple, and it just does some commands running like command prompt executables, but it's so simple that you understand what's going on. And the basic structure is always with the create builder function that I showed you. That's one of the main things that you need to use and understand. So I would go to angular.io, look at the builders documentation there, and check out one of the NGX builders that Santosh gathered, or one of the other builders. And the ng deploy builders are pretty easy to understand, because it always communicates with Azure, AWS, and that kind of stuff. So it's pretty solid, if you want to call it like that. And if you understand something like the concept of the builder that is just a function that needs to be executed, then you can make your own or contribute to it. And probably what you're going to contribute is something specific around, for example, the Netlify or the AWS needs. If I look at my project, the AWS project, there are questions like, could we remove all the older files that are already present on the storage, for example? Well, that could be an implementation, and then you could contribute to that. So basically, I see a lot of builders are, well, the needs for an open source project are around a specific implementation for the builder. But I think if you just know the concept of the builder by looking at the Angular.io documentation, looking at some of the projects that are already out there, I think it would be the next step is then to just see or experiment with your own. I think that's a good one. That is why I started the AWS deploy builder. And the next step would be then to contribute probably to one of the open source projects. And I hope I answered your question because I make it a little bit bigger probably.
Yeah, actually, thank you, Jeffrey. As you mentioned that I also saw Santosh presenting. It was in NG India because I attended that conference.
Yeah.
So the very first time when I saw NGX builder, so he had built NGX Netlify, I think so that time.
Yeah.
And after some time after that, I saw him on Twitter sharing NGX AWS deploy. So it was you. Today I came to know. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah. So I just followed you on Twitter. Thank you. And thank you for the nice talk. And thank you for Angular Kenya to having you here. So you shared your some good how we can start on open source project. So hope till next talk I should contribute something.
Well, you probably will. And again, just try to do it and just experiment a little bit with something you like. Imagization, it's public available. You can just fork it and try it on your own and change the settings and well, just ping me if you have any questions. I will probably answer them pretty quick. Well, maybe I'm a little bit busy because I'm expecting a baby, but just ping me and I will respond.
Sure, Jeffrey. Thank you. Thank you, been kind.
Yeah. Anyone else was a question?
It can also be not related to builders. I'm not sure if I can answer it, but we're with smart people here, so probably we'll find the answer.
Yeah, sure. If
So
anyone also
ask me
has
any
any
questions.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Okay, so
sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no issue. You can.
So I just Michiel asked a question, and we looked at Annex. So the Narwhal team made the Annex part, and they made it a bit different. They use executors and generators. It is like a similar concept, but it's a little bit different. So if anybody there is looking at builders, I would go start with the Angular way, let's call it like that, so that you just know how the basics are, and from that go to the Annex part. So the only reason for that is that you know the concept. That's the main thing. It's not that I'm against the Annex part. I'm not, because I'm using it pretty heavily in the company. So, but if you know the concept, then the next step with, for example, the Annex way of working with executors and generators will be easier to understand. So that was the thing I want to say.
All right, great. It's amazing. Thank you. Ashish, you wanted to say something?
Yes, Ven, thank you. So actually, in my current project, I'm using Angular 11.1.2 version. So when I was creating a new project, it was not asking for the routing by default, because we get one option there. Are you sure you want to add the routing? We chose yes or no, right?
Yeah.
And later it asks for the CSS type, like CSS, SCSS and all, less and SAS. So these two options are missing in my CLI. When I found that in the issues of Angular repo, So, and from one person from Angular team has said that this is not an issue. You need to probably check your node version and npm version. So after checking that, still I'm not getting that. So how can I deal with it?
So
Yeah, that's
just
actually.
oh, sorry,
Sorry,
go ahead.
sorry.
No,
Yeah,
go
that's
ahead, Wayne.
actually. Yeah, that's actually a good question. I've actually been having the same problem, and for me, I think, and it's kind of tedious at some point, is I have to add the flags for styling and also for routing. So yeah, I don't know what the problem is. I've tried to really figure it out, but yeah, no solution on that.
Yeah, so I'm not sure because maybe the CSS part, we all know that when you do ng new and your application name, you will get the questions. That's one of the things that schematics understands. And what it understands is that you can have like a couple of questions in there with values. So basically the styling one is which one do you want? CSS, SAS, or all the others. And that's like something that's in the schematics. And that should be in the Angular schematics provided. And I think indeed in previous versions, and I didn't check this specific one, is that they removed the question, I think then, or maybe the option to add it. But you can just use the -- routing when you do ng new, and it will add the routing module by default. So maybe it's like the workaround at least for your thing. And I'm not sure why the Angular CLI team removed it or deprecated or that kind of stuff. I'm not sure about that. But if you need it, you can just do ng new, your application name -- routing, and it will be there.
Okay. And one more question, Jeffrey. Just in your slide, I saw ng test is being deprecated in version 12, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well,
what will be the
sorry, not the command. So the command it will always be there, ng lint and ng end-to-end, but the builder itself will be deprecated.
Okay, so do we have any other option for that?
Well, for the linting one, there's the Angular-ES lint. That's from James Henry on his open source repository. He also explains good how to do it or how to configure everything and how you can migrate your TS-lint stuff to ES-lint. So that would be my go-to. And I think there's also a schematic from, I think it was the guys from Breebug. They made a Cypress one that you can use to do the end-to-end testing with. But I don't know. I think the Protector builder, they're going to deprecate that one. So if you have like a project already with Protector, just use it. It will you can still use it. But if you're going to start with a new project, I would look into that.
Okay, thank you, Jeffrey. That's all from my side.
I think for me, it's more of a comment because there was a time we had a session with Nishu. I don't know if you know Nishu. She's a GDE for Angular, and she took us through the session of how to build NPM packages. And so bring this all together and also understanding what happens behind the scenes with Angular CLI, like it really makes sense right now, that in my opinion.
Yeah, you can see like right now you can see why they made builders or why they made the architect tool. That's like the internals, because now we can easily adopt anything, and I'm not saying we should, but if you want to do something completely different with the Angular code and make your own compiler around it, it's pretty possible right now with it just creating your own builder.
Yeah, sure.
And this is also like,
yeah.
oh, sorry. This is also how, for example, Ionic and that kind of stuff, they also use under the hood. I think when they talk to the Angular CLI or probably a couple of things, they are also using builders, and that is also how NX works. So NX under the hood has some own builders that is doing stuff in their way of working, for example, with Cypress or Storybook and that kind of stuff, but also with React, they all use the similar things under the hood. and it's highly flexible at this point.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else has a question or a comment or just any question related to Angular?
Or open source. I'm also open for open source questions.
Yeah.
I would like to ask one question. It's a bit debatable, but I need some positive approach on it. So sorry for asking it. How you choose between Angular and React? Like, this is not the right platform to ask, but still.
Well, for me, it's a good question because I'm also using React today in my day work. And for me, I think both are fine, and it's just a choice. And for me, my main go-to is Angular because I have a background in .NET, C#, that kind of stuff where dependency injection already was there. I like the way how dependency injection works. I like that the let's say the style guide of Angular is a bit strict, if you want to call it like that. I like that. That's why I like it. And of course the theme around it and the Ivy stuff they're doing, that's awesome. But I like more the simpler things like in dependency injection concepts and the strictness of how you should build something. That's basically why I do it. I'm working daily in React, and my personal opinion about it is that the property, how do you call it? The property binding that's from top to bottom. I don't like it per se. I think it's a bit messy, but again, I'm working a lot in Angular. I'm doing a lot of years already in Angular, so that would probably be the main reason. And the strictness is my main reason to go to Angular. But again, it depends. It depends on your project. It depends on your needs. It depends on the scalable you need. So it's always pros and cons, always.
Yeah, there are multiple parameters to choose one. Yeah. So actually, I was working in one project which was depending on React. So I worked for 3 months on React. So I found that Angular is pretty much good to get started with because I'm just having 2 years of experience in front-end development. And my first pick was Angular. And today when I tend to choose one framework, so my first choice always goes to Angular only.
Yeah, and that's a good decision. And if you want to go React, that's also a good decision. It's we're blessed with so many good frameworks out there that we can easily just use and try it out.
Right.
But I would recommend Angular. But
yeah, same here. Victory with your free.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you, Ashish. Anyone else has a question? And also, I think so I've been having also just related to what Ashish is mentioning, and also just to provide also some more info on that. So, like I think it was like 2 days ago when one of our members asked me as to why some people trash Angular, and I usually tell them, well, for some of them, it's probably because they've never used it before. So, of course, they'd be more biased to trashing one framework over the other because probably they never used it and they probably just had rumors and all that. And actually, listening to your opinion on, like, you've worked with both Angular and React, and you're giving your opinion based on that. It's amazing that you say that all of them are actually great. It all depends on the project requirements, and yeah, that's actually amazing.
Yeah, and I think it's also maybe like food. It's taste. So the one thing you like, but your neighbor doesn't like it, but it's still good.
Yeah.
Probably it's something like that. And it also depends on where you come from, what your study is. If you did Go or Flutter or .NET, it all depends on your learning path. And the one is easier or in your mind, at least, it's easier to learn.
Yeah, it's true.
So Actually, as Ben mentioned, just the situation, I got one, like I recalled one situation, and this happened actually in NG India. So the guy asked this question to Rob Walmart on the stage. So he literally, after the talk, when we were meeting Rob, so he asked him that why we don't go for React and why Angular, because Angular keeps changing every year, like every 6 months, and it has a very major change, right? So, and he had some rumor in his mind because he never used Angular before, and he was new to Angular and he was a React developer. So he asked the like a question like, in React we have we don't have to refresh whole page. We just refresh after changing, we get change in particular component. And in Angular we used to have like a refresh whole page. So Rob explained him nearly half an hour. It's not the case because you haven't used Angular, so you can't comment on it. So first get used to it, and then you can literally compare yourself.
That's actually true. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for that, Ashish.
Yeah, actually, NG India has got many memories. Like you mentioned Nishu Goyal, and I got there, like got a chance to meet Breberg also. Just Jeffrey referred him, and Rob, Michael Ladki, Nishu Goyal, Siddharth Ajmera, Pankaj Pakar. These people, yeah,
Awesome,
very
awesome.
great
And thank you.
experience I
Okay.
had. Yeah.
And thank you very
Sorry,
much for
Ben.
actually joining us. Yeah, thank you for joining us
Oh,
actually for this session.
no,
It's
Ben.
amazing.
Actually, I like these talks. I like these talks because it literally feed my mind with some great knowledge. You know.
Hi, awesome, awesome. That's great to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have
Yeah.
actually tons lined up for the community. So yeah, definitely RSVP for all the sessions if you can. Yeah. Anyway,
Sure. Sure.
yeah. So if there's no other question, first of all, I'd like to take it over to Jeffrey to like kind of like closing remarks before I close the session.
Well, good question. So Wayne, again, thank you for organizing it. I really appreciate it. I appreciate to be here. Thank you all the people who are coming here and watching the talk. I will share my slides with and the open source projects with Wayne at least, or do it via Twitter, so that everybody can just have a look at it. DM me if you have any questions. Go check out the new Angular version. It's pretty awesome. Go check out the new RxJS version. They are pretty awesome. And that's it. I'm just blessed to be here.
Yeah, anyway, yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Jeffrey, for taking the time to take us through this session. For my case, this is actually something that I've always been looking forward to, like actually digging deeper into some of these concepts that come with Angular. I'd like to say thank you for taking this session. And also, I'd like to also congratulate you for your wife expecting.
Yeah,
Amazing.
thank you.
And yeah, wishing you and your wife a great delivery.
Thank
And yeah, and I'd like to say a big thank you to those who joined us for this session. Some of them dropped off the call at some point. But yeah, thank you very much for joining us. It's an honor to bring you guys all this content. And yeah, as usual, this video is going to be available to all of you via our YouTube channel. So if you haven't subscribed, just go over to YouTube and just search for Angular Kenya, and you're definitely going to find all the list of the sessions we've been having, from Angular for beginners to currently now diving deeper into Angular and also exploring other parts of Angular. But yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Jeffrey. And yeah, as Jeffrey mentioned, he'll share with me all the resources that he's used for this session. And then also it's going to be available in the description box or description section of the YouTube video. So just be on the lookout for that. So yeah, I'd like to bring this meeting to a close and just want to say thank you for everyone. Yeah, and wishing you guys all a good evening and some of them also a good day.
Thank you all. See you soon.
Yeah. All right. See
Thank you all, and congratulations, Jeffrey. I forgot to mention that. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It doesn't matter. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Guys,
Yo,
be safe.
bye.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.